let's start out by sharing with the audience who you are and what you do.
Well, so Lynda Harvey, Director of Customer Service and Account Management with Kin Insurance. And essentially, I'm the head of customer service for Kin Insurance.
As you know, I spent a lot of time, my producers spent a lot of time finding just a select group of people to come and talk to us today. And I really appreciate the fact that you've taken this time out of your conference to come speak to us. Let's explore your experience, your vision, your perspective of the call center industry, the markets, the trends, what you're seeing. So that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Let's start with, where are you in this point in time with relationship to AI, the changes in our industry, and what are you thinking about every day when you go into work?
So AI is a really interesting topic. And, it's the hottest topic, right? AI for this, AI for that. And I think that so often we think about AI in a sense of how can we lighten the load for our agents. And then you get into like this really scary place of, does AI replace agents? And I think from the experiences that I've had here and the demos that I've seen and experiences in the wild, I would say that AI isn't going to replace our agents because we still need humans on the other end. And we need the human empathy and the human reactions. And I think that AI is really, really great. I think that there's a lot that you can do, but there's just something that you need, especially when you're working in customer service. You can utilize AI, I think, for automating a lot of your processes. And so your agents have less lifting that they have to do so they can focus on the human interaction. All about automating like as many processes as we possibly can. Again, to just allow our agents to sit and focus and work with the customers and take care of the customers. And every day when I go to work, that really is what it's about. It's what am I doing to help make sure that we're taking care of customers? Because I think we all know that in the CS or CX or whatever space we're calling it anymore, that makes or breaks companies. If they don't have a good human experience, it's a make or break.
It's true. And so much of what AI I think is going to do is reduce those short call experiences. But let me hit you with something completely random that hit me this morning. I just want to get your hot take on it. With all this talk about AI and agents, what about when the customers bring their own AI to the table? So now you've got AI supporting customers who are rapidly moving through our customer experiences and sort of taking half of the load of finding the right booking time or the reservation or what have you.
I mean, I think that would be incredible, honestly, for customers if they are able to utilize something to help vet, right? If they could put something in, if you think about, a good portion of, my counterpart, so the sales side of my division, it would be incredible if we had customers who came in who were more educated, who were more informed, who had something doing the work for them. And so they literally could just make the purchase. And especially in the insurance space, because insurance is so tricky. It would be incredible for customers to have some kind of AI that could really help walk them through in customer-friendly terms of this is what your insurance means and this is the change to your insurance, which would also be incredible. Insurance is also a tricky space because regulations change. What it looks like today looks different tomorrow. So I think that there's also a wonderful opportunity out there for some kind of AI that could be that dynamic and change and understand the regulations on both sides, honestly.
Such a strange new world of experiences, isn't it? I mean, can you imagine? It's hard to even imagine what it was like 5 years ago. I'm like thinking back before COVID, what did we do? We used phones and we spoke to people. In your particular sector, what are you encountering in terms of the changes that are happening in your part of the industry? Regulations you mentioned. I happen to be sensitive to the subject because I'm working on the customer experience right now for a large global financial organization. Lots of finance regulations, particularly around taxes, change every year. And you've got to really be up to date on that. And it seems like AI, now that I look back, is the only way to keep up. I have no idea how we did this before. But how about in the insurance industry, you have regulations, but what are the big weather changes there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the regulations are probably the largest challenge that we have because they vary state by state. So, I think with financial institutions, I think there's probably some uniformity and universal regulations, but there are regulations, the regulations in Florida are completely different than the regulations in Texas or Virginia or Louisiana. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge that we have. And then again, it's understanding insurance. I'm a homeowner myself. I work for an insurance company, and I'm still kind of feel clueless every time. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was a thing. And I think it's just the complexity of the business. And then having, again, humans who have to understand it and really do need to know the ins and outs of it. Because I think most of us don't ever want to think about our homeowners insurance. And it's with the crazy weather that we have and with climate change, it's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when.
You're really hitting home for me. Full disclosure, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this on air, but let's just say I ended up in a lawsuit with my insurance company due to weather and my home. And fortunately for me, it all worked out amicably. But I guess if I'm being empathetic, there was a part of me that I guess now was like, how's the insurance company supposed to know that this is going to be the situation when they insured me?
Yeah.
So,
there are just so many variables, and you plan for as much as you possibly can. But again, things have changed so dramatically, even with the weather, that there are things that I don't think anybody could. We do our very, very best, and we have the research and we have the science and we're doing all of the things, but there are just so many variables.
Maybe you heard, I get all my news from TikTok, so take that for what it's worth. But I saw a lot of TikToks yesterday saying that there are some climate scientists who are sort of trying to pull fire alarms, and they were saying every city in the world is registering higher temperatures. It's not like a weather pattern, like all the cities are going on a trend of increasing, and they were saying the line of dominoes that falls, that it gets catastrophic pretty fast.
It does. I know. I was just living in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I just moved back, and hottest summer on record for them.
As I was experiencing that TikTok, I had this like horrifying self-realization that I was like, wow, that's messed up. Wow, I wonder if somebody's doing anything about that. And wow, I haven't been outside in the actual air for like 6 months. So I don't even know what the climate is outside of these buildings. So I'm like the worst part of the problem. Back to your regulations. Just curious, because I don't know how it works. What do you have? Do you have a call center in every city, or do you have like these libraries? Like, do you use AI? Okay, it's Colorado. Get the Colorado regulations, and the agent has to like parse through multiple. How does that even work?
Yeah, so we do have agents that are licensed in every state that we operate. I know. It's a lot. It's a lot. And they have to go to a fact sheet for the state when they're talking to the customer and advising them about their coverages or any kind of changes that they're going to make to their policy.
Sounds like the case study for agent assist right there.
I think so too.
Are you doing that now, or are you moving towards it?
We are definitely looking at moving towards it. I think some of the challenges that are faced, especially in smaller organizations, and probably larger organizations as well, is you have to translate a lot from your systems into new systems. And when you've got a smaller organization, sometimes your software can be so proprietary, but also a little convoluted. And so trying to find something that plugs in that can parse out that information has proved to be a slightly challenging for us.
Maybe I can add some value to your podcast here on that topic.
Yes.
So because I explore these technologies everywhere, and I'm always encountering people on the verge of like trying to solve these problems. Hear me out. Like, your mileage may vary, but I bumped into a guy, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of his company, but I can get it for you. And just for the record, I don't do any referral fees. I don't get paid to plug people. But this guy, I think it was CCW Nashville, he does AI assist and augmentation through the browser. So your light bulb of me. That's what happened to me. When he sat down, I'm like, what are you doing? He told me, I said, I got to do a story on that. I just did a podcast on him. I don't know when it's going to be released, but I'll make sure you get a copy of that.
I would love that.
Because you get it. It's on the browser. So as it moves into your other systems, it does its browser thing, and it gets in there and says, all right, let's do this AI stuff. Here's the one thing that I learned, because I was like, that sounds great. Sounds really unsafe. And he said, as it turns out, there has been so much development on the security of browsers. You use your browsers for banking, you use it for all these things. Browsers are probably one of the safer mechanisms to get in and out of your legacy systems. And I'll double down on that. I recently, about a year ago, Google's over here, the next booth over. I met this woman, Raluca. She was like, hey, we have this new Chrome OS browser thing for call centers, and it's amazing, and it does all these fantastic things. And she listed them off to me. Reduce capital costs, increase efficiency, secure, easy to deploy, yada, yada. And I was like, well, Google, you have all this stuff, of course, but like, who's going to believe that? Because it's like, it's hard to cut through the clutter. And she said, Dennis, I want you to find out for yourself. So I took a stack of Chromebooks down to a third world call center and did a little documentary where I implemented it on a client. Turns out, using that Chrome OS browser and the way they do their systems, it reduced capital costs by 40%. That's one thing. They have a thing called zero touch enrollment. So you can take 10 or 1,000 of these Chromebooks and drop them off in a geography. Agents can grab them, instant call center with no buildings. Then here's the other thing, the most important thing. I think, like, I don't know how to wrap our minds around it other than I talked to the people. The CEO said his number one most amazing experience with it was there was 0 help desk tickets as they migrated the client from the old system onto the new.
Wow.
So the reason I bring that up is the browsers, there's some to it.
That's amazing.
I know this is about you. Let's get back to the important reason we're here today.
Let's talk about me.
What would you like to talk about? This was really, thank you for being here. You have a unique perspective in the industry. Are there some things you'd like to discuss today?
I think I'm really, really the most passionate about leadership, like talking about leadership in the CX space. I think that so often one of the things I really try and talk to my leaders about is like intentional leadership and how we can be intentional with how we're leading. I think so often, and especially in call center spaces, call centers are notorious for promoting from within, which I am a big believer in. It's a way to reward your employees. It's a way to keep your employees and have really good performing employees continue to perform. But the trouble is you start to promote these agents that were great at their jobs, right? They're great at their jobs, and then suddenly we're forcing them into a leadership position, and we're like, okay, now go lead a team. And then we start throwing things at them like, what's your strategy? And you've been a manager now for like 3 whole months, and you really should be doing this differently and or better. And the thing is so often these leaders, especially in this space, are just stumbling through it, right? They're just stumbling through. And
we all are.
Well, I know, we're all just trying to get through the day. And so I think so often leaders they replicate what they've seen or what they've known, right? Which sometimes is really good, and a lot of times is really, really bad. And so, how are we doubling down on really setting our leaders up for success? And how are we helping them be intentional leaders so they're there in the right seat, on the bus, to quote that old saying. But what are we doing? And it's all about, like, how are we taking and we're molding their experience and reminding them, like, hey, first of all, this is a business of humans. Like, that's all we're doing. And so if you don't like humans, maybe don't be a leader, don't be a manager. But then also, how can you go through and be the best manager today? I think, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I've been around for a while. And I was a terrible manager when I was first promoted, because I was just like, I guess I just tell you what to do and expect you to do it. And so I really tried to spend a lot of time with managers and leaders and helping them, like, figure out, number one, what's their style? What are they good at? What are parts that they don't like that we need to get better at? And ultimately, how can we be better leaders just by understanding ourselves, what motivates us, and then what motivates our team?
You said so much there.
I know, I'm sorry. I could forever.
Let's unpack.
Yeah.
So I love that you have this focus on leadership. You have a clear perspective and an objective. How do you accomplish that? And I ask you that because I've recently been hearing and exploring and working with a lot of different stories around coaching, training, workflows that bring AI in to help train and monitor in real time. So we're not doing performance reviews retrospectively, but living in the present with agents. And I also agree with you that what got you here won't get you there. These are all important things, but as a person who's passionate about this, how are you navigating the opportunities for software to help the thought leadership or the mentorship that comes from humans only? What role do you play in that? How are you going to change the industry, Lynda?
I just here, actually, I saw a demo of a software that really kind of hones in on the coaching aspect, right?
Which software was it?
Amplify.
Mm-hmm.
Is Amplify.
Yep. Number one coaching platform there is in the market.
And I think what they have done really, really well is it's not only go coach the bad stuff. It's, hey, take a minute to go recognize the good stuff.
That's right.
And I think that in general, so often our managers sit down with agents. And I think even when I sit down with the managers, like we're just anxiously waiting to hear the bad news. Like, what did I do wrong, right? And I think having those moments to celebrate, hey, this is really good. Or I saw that you completed X amount of coachings this week. And congratulations, that's a lot of coachings that you did. Or, but what I think Amplify has done has really kind of honed in on, hey, don't talk to them about their AHT. They don't need help with their AHT. But man, they sure need some help with empathy. So go in and talk to them about their empathy. Right. Or let's really talk about, like, why are they missing? And from a coaching perspective, if you can hone in on that one thing that the agent needs truly, then the conversation changes, right? Your one-on-ones change, your role plays change. And you can sit down and say, okay, so we've missed empathy on every single call. Do you understand what empathy is, right? And again, part of leadership is getting to the why and helping the agents understand, why is this important? And then why is it important to me, right? Like, how is this going to, it's the whole what's in it for me, right? And it really helps you sit down and have meaningful conversations and impactful conversations that are personalized. And it's not just like, oh, well, I think this is a thing, but you can really, really like dive in.
Let's talk about personalized to the agent, because I feel like a lot of the, let's call it quote unquote, air quotes, personalization is off target in that it lacks the context of the call center. I'll give you an example. It's easy to say, hey, Dennis, empathy. Let's talk a little bit about that. Or, hey, Dennis, let's talk about this thing where you can see some improvements. It's different to say that when you have something like Amplify that says, turns out this is an endemic problem across all of this conversations for these reasons. And now Dennis can work on empathy, but it's not because Dennis was having a bad day or week. He is part of a group that is systematically, we can create better agents in this whole sector of our business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So you're passionate about leadership. Mm-hmm. How are you, obviously you're on the podcast, your first podcast, sharing your perspectives on leadership. What is it that you would like to say to influence the industry, call centers, agents, management? What does your voice need to say?
There isn't a one size fits all, right? There's not a one size fits all. And I think that what we often do in larger organizations, and sometimes even in smaller organizations, it's like, here's your playbook, here's your framework, and this is how you have to do every single coaching conversation. And you can't be an individual, and you can't do it. You have to do it this way. And I understand, like, there are definitely proven formulas that work. But if you don't allow somebody to be at least a little bit of an individual in those conversations, you're never going to have that true impact, right? You're going to see turnover, and you're going to see low morale. If organizations could say, hey, listen, like, this is how we do it, this is your framework, but we want you to have some wiggle room, or we want you to have, like, your contribution into this as well, and make it your own. It doesn't have to be so rigid. It can be yours, and it can be this, and find you in the conversation. Because Dennis, you're never going to coach the same way I'm going to coach, even if we have a framework. So let's just embrace that and say, okay, yes, people are different because they're humans, right? So let's help them find, like, what works for them within, we still have a sandbox. We're not telling them to just, like, go rogue, but we don't have to be so rigid. Let's let these people be humans, and let's give them guidance.
I'm sensitive to mansplaining, so I'm not going to mansplain. But what you said rings so true on a number of levels that individuality in the pursuit of scale and size and economics has been thwarted as a secret advantage for so many businesses. And I do see exactly, just to reinforce your perspective, there are a number of, even on the floor here today, there are a number of businesses that I've seen come to the realization that you're describing, and they have backpedaled and they have turned back towards letting people be individuals within the organization. And the few companies that are starting to do that are starting to realize a better harmony between the machines and the humans. And I'll give you an example. Companies that adopt AI to get present day or present time analysis have less fear about what people are doing on a day-to-day basis or trying to control people with a one-size-fits-all. And so that little bit of a change in the market is really starting to give way to some new thinking. But I would just say you're part of a forward-thinking group in this idea of letting people be themselves to do their best job.
Oh, thank you. And I think we're finding that also with the younger generation. That's what the younger generation needs. I think some of us who are in the older generations, we were just like, yes, we'll do it your way, however you want, like, just let me keep my job. And the thing is it's just not working with our younger generation. And we're finding that some of us oldies also, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like we feel like, oh, like I've been released and I can actually be myself. And are we sure it's okay? Like, are we sure? It
is a little bit nerve-wracking.
It's like, really? Are we sure? But I think that, the more we embrace that and the more we, again, let's give a roadmap. Let's give some ground rules. We're all playing in the sandbox together. But allow yourself to, if you want to build a castle, that's great. But if you want to build like just a pile, that's awesome too. As long as we are just progressing together.
Making progress. Wise words. I love having you on this first podcast. As we wrap up, as we come to a conclusion, what wisdom would you impart on leaders, teammates inside the call center that you feel would help them on their journey for the rest of this year?
So I was on a panel yesterday, and it's the same advice I gave on my panel yesterday of like, never ever ask a team member to do something that you're unwilling to do. We're all in it together. We all are steering the ship together. We're all here together, which means sometimes we all have to pitch in and we all have to get there together.
Wise words. Lynda, thank you so much for being on CX in the Wild at Customer Contact Week.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.